Alright. Ken Kaneki, bruh. Ken Kaneki. What y'all know about him, bruh? Tokyo Ghoul, what y'all know about him? I'm not gonna lie, bro. Watched a lot of anime, watched a lot of TV shows, watched a lot of movies, read a lot of books, read a lot of manga. But Tokyo Ghoul and Tokyo Ghoul Re, two great, bro. I think that's the greatest piece of fiction of all time. The greatest, without a doubt. Nobody can ever tell me otherwise. That is the best written story I've ever read. And I'm not gonna lie, bro. It literally changed my life and the way I view the world. I can't even lie, cause I can really relate to Ken Kaneki. You feel what I'm saying? Like at the start of the manga, you feel what I'm saying? Like Ken Kaneki, he didn't really know who he was. Like he was just a normal human, and all of a sudden got turned into a ghoul out of nowhere. And he was struggling with his identity, trying to figure out whether or not he was a human or people calling him ghoul. Because, he had ghoul tendencies, he was a ghoul. Like, he wasn't satisfied by normal food. He was satisfied by eating humans. You feel what I'm saying? Like, he could only eat human meat, could only drink coffee, do all the other shit. He had the Kagun, or however you say it, bro. You feel what I'm saying? Like, he had all this shit. He was a ghoul. But deep down, he couldn't accept that he was a human. And as he kept moving along, as he kept meeting more and more people who were, he saw a lot in society, and you thought we were friends, but they turned out to be ghouls. It kind of like messed up with his mind, and it kind of got to the point where a lot of people started depending on him in a sense. You feel what I'm saying? Because he was strong. That boy was strong. I want to keep it a stat, bro. They called him the one-eyed ghoul for a reason, the one-eyed king. That nigga was strong as fuck, and it got to the point where everyone, because of his inner organs or whatever, like how special he was, people were coming after him. People wanted to kill him. People wanted to taste him because nobody's ever seen a one-eyed ghoul since the one-eyed owl. And because of that, he had a lot of people he had to protect. He had a lot of people he had to take care of. Everyone was depending on him in a sense, even though they thought they weren't. Even though they said they were independent, deep down their protection relied on Kaneki. You feel what I'm saying? And to be able to protect, you have to kind of lean into the ghoul aspect. You feel what I'm saying? Like you kind of have to lean into that. You have to lean into your powers. You have to lean into your abilities. But Kaneki always struggled with that because he was a human. He was a human his whole life until out of nowhere he got turned into a ghoul. He couldn't accept the fact that he was something different. He couldn't accept the fact that his identity changed, and he started to go crazy. Like when he was in the when they were raiding Kano's lab, bro, he really started to go insane, bro. He started turning into a centipede. He started leveling up, started powering up. Nobody knew what he was because he was trying to figure out whether or not he was human. And when he was getting tortured by Jason, that's when he truly realized that he was a ghoul. He had to fully accept that because he was putting himself through so much pain, so much anguish, trying to be someone he wasn't, when in reality he had to accept that he was someone new. When he was getting tortured by Jason, none of the when he had to count down from 1,000 by 7, 1,993, you feel what I'm saying? Like, none of that pain meant anything. Even though that nigga Jason was doing the most vile shit to him. That was the craziest torture I've ever seen. He was doing the craziest shit to him. Anyone would go crazy at him. People would die. In fact, Kaneki was literally dying, but the fact that he was a ghoul, he was being able to get regenerated. But that pain meant nothing because of the internal battle he was going through. Kaneki was fighting like a demon in his head. He didn't know who he was. He didn't know his personality. And once he started to accept that, he can't change the past. He can't change his new identity. He just has to embrace it. That's when he started to let go of all the pain. That's when none of it meant anything. That's when he started to level up. That's when he started to, grow stronger. He started becoming more independent. He started to find out more of who he was. And then even when he got turned into Heisei, or Heisei, or however you say it, the dude at the CCG or whatever, he was still struggling because deep down he knew there's something more to that. He knew that even though he changed, even though he embraced that he was a ghoul, there's still a deeper aspect to him that he never realized. There's still some demons he was fighting that he just could never figure out. And that started making him go crazy. And that's when he came to find out that when he was younger, there's two sides of Kaneki. There's the one when he was, there's two parts of Kaneki, I should say. There's the one when he's going through that battle, who he was and whatnot. And then there's Heisei. But there turned out there was a third one. The third one was when he was a kid. He was getting abused by his mom, and that was so it really fucked him up mentally. Because throughout the whole entire manga, he's talking about how his mom was such a great person, such a she did everything for him, and he always spoke highly of her, and that he could never understood why she ended up disappearing out of nowhere because everything was great. Because he said that out of nowhere she just disappeared, but it was just him hiding. It was him trying to shield himself from the pain and stuff that being abused caused him. He's trying to deal with the inner trauma that he could never really explain the emotions for. And that really that was a completely turning point for him because his whole life he buried that inside of him. He never told anyone. It's like he forced himself to think it was fake. It's like he forced himself to think it was a dream. But he had to stop dreaming. He literally said, "I'm done dreaming." He had to change for the better. He had to accept all this for what it was. And then once he started to accept that, that's when he truly started to take off. And I'm almost done with the manga, but from what it looks like, it's like he's finally starting to, accept peace for what it is. He's starting to understand that, he can't change the way he is. He can't change the things of his past, but, he just has to accept them for what they are and that he has to grow from that. And I think in a way I can kind of relate to that. I feel like in a way I haven't been abused or anything like that. Like that, this just is an example. Like I've kind of buried up stuff like that. Not to that extreme, of course. Like I've had a great childhood and everything, great family, great friends, everything. No issues on that part. Just want to clear it up. But I feel like there's a lot of stuff I've kind of buried to myself. And I've kind of forced myself to not believe. I've kind of felt like I was faking some shit at some point. I thought that the shit I was going through was never real. I kind of thought that I was just, making it up all in my head, and that I could never really understand it. But then when it kept popping up, I would always, continue to think that all that was fake, but at the same time continue to wonder, what am I missing? What am I not understanding? Why am I feeling this way? And all this shit. When the reality was, I just had to truly, I couldn't run from it anymore. There's no point in running. I mean, there is a point in running, it's a safer option. It gives you protection. But that protection is actually the most danger to you. That protection, it shields you away from dealing with it, and that it just puts more burdens on you. It just puts more problems on you. You can't really deal with it all at once, and you start to push it more farther and farther away. But you can't really it just starts building up on itself. It gets harder and harder to deal with, and as you keep pushing it farther and farther away, protecting yourself, then it starts to overload your mind. You think you're going crazy. But I had to learn that I got to accept it for what it is. Yes, all that shit happened. I've done some shit. A lot of stuff happened. But I kind of just got to accept it for what it is. I can't run from it. I just got to embrace it for what it is. There's no point in dwelling on the past when there's a whole future ahead of me, bruh. You feel what I'm saying? Hopefully a long future, but you never know. You feel what I'm saying? You just gotta set things for where they are. You can't run from it. The biggest. It might. Oh my God, bro. I'm so sorry. It might hurt in the moment to deal with it. Then it might be a lot to take in. But I think that's the best thing that you can do for yourself. If you front load that pain, front load that hard work, it's gonna make it way easier to live life in. You're gonna be able to deal with all those emotions, deal with all those feelings, and just be able to live more freely. You won't have to place all those unnecessary burdens on yourself. You just gotta deal with them head on. You feel what I'm saying? So, kaneki, bro. I think that manga really changed my life, bro. Tokyo Ghoul, y'all gotta tap down. Loki just spoiled a lot of it, but y'all really gotta tap in, bro. That shit is the greatest piece of fiction of all time. That literally changed my life, bro. Changed the way I see myself. Changed the way I see the world. Fucking love kaneki. I'm going to get a tattoo, bro. Centipede with the spider lilies right on the sleeve. Right here. You feel what I'm saying? That's gonna be my first tat, hopefully. But yeah, kaneki, bro. Changed the game. All right, I'm gonna see y'all.